What is the most disrespectful shit someone has done to you? My first job as a photography intern. My boss posted on Facebook that he was going to fire me hours before he told me. We were friends on Facebook at the time. When I worked a kiosk, someone sneezed into their hand and wiped it on my back when they passed by. It was a first day of one of my college courses and we were telling everyone our names. I said mine and the professor said my husband wanted to name our son that, but I didn't want him to get made fun of. Edit. I'm sure others have had it way worse. But when I was about 17, I was assembling a ride-on train track, about 2 feet between rails, for an indoor amusement park when the owner of the company came in. He decided to help me. I don't know why. I didn't ask for help and didn't need help. He helped me put a couple track segments together and decided that was enough work for him, so he got up off the floor and wiped his greasy, dusty hands off on my jeans. With my leg in them. I was seriously incensed. With my leg in them so obvious and yet so much better. Was working at a Dairy Queen when I was 16. It was a hot summer day and a lady came in and dumped her melted blizzard upside down on my arm hand. In the process it covered my register, the wall and the floor. She started yelling about how her ice cream melted and how I need to make her a new one. She was served in the drive-thru. I was working the front counter inside. My co-worker said she left over 20 minutes ago. I still had to make her a new one and give her a refund. A kid at school when I was younger who put out his cigarette out on my face. Still got the burn scar. Edit. A lot of people been asking about the repercussions and suing him for damages. I was really young back then. Around 14? And the rules around bullying wasn't set to stone. They left it off as kids being kids even though I had serious burn marks on my face. We filed a complaint. Went to the police and sued him. In the end the lawsuit returned us with something minor cause he was too young. So he did get some tasks he needed to fulfill by justice. It wasn't enough for me. Hope that clears the questions people had. Locked my new bike up outside a supermarket and ducked inside to get some yogurt because it was Friday night and that's how I de-stress after a long week. Self-checkout line was busier than expected but I was in and out in about 10 to 15 minutes. Didn't want to leave it for too long because someone had pinched the seat from outside my house a couple of weeks earlier. From a short distance I could see my bike was facing the opposite way I'd left it and felt a little confused. I got closer and saw my U-lock looking like a pretzel. It seemed like someone had tried to wrench off my lock. Failed and then just picked up my bike and tried to use it as leverage to pop the thing off. Failed again. But succeeded in completely f-king the entire aluminium frame. Total write-off. Could not be fixed. My ex didn't allow me to have any female friends and wouldn't even let me say my best friend's female name in front of her. We broke up because she fell in love with her best friend, male. I had someone I considered a close friend send an unprovoked email outing me to the entire staff of the place I worked. Not only that, he took a screenshot of an online dating profile as proof and told them to keep their kids away from me. I was a teaching professional at a country club. Teacher here. From a student. One student described how he would pay and kill me in graphic detail after he failed a test. From a coworker. A paraprofessional mocked me for high-fiving one of my autistic students after he gave a really great description of how he understood a math problem. That kid is a selective mute with a horrific past. And she told me I was a complete joke for congratulating him. Even worse. She said it in front of the kid. From my father. Putting me down when I got to meet my childhood idol. I got to show my idol my first published research paper. And my father interrupted just to tell me shut up. You're not going to win the Nobel Prize. Yesterday at my job, supermarket, I went outside with some guy to bring the handicap scooter back in. He immediately began to yell at me and curse at me about how he is handicapped and for not helping his wife unload their groceries. I tried explaining to him that because of the current situation, we can't touch people's groceries unless they specifically ask us. He wouldn't even let me talk. Kept interrupting and insulting me. So I just stayed quiet and he eventually threatened to call his grandson to come kick my ass. Then drove off with his wife who was also insulting me under her breath. Being an essential worker sucks. In 11th grade a longtime friend told police I broke into his house and stole some Gucci bracelets. At the time I didn't know what a Gucci was. Got a call to go down to the principal's office where a lieutenant from my local PD was there and started questioning me about the incident. Said they had witnesses and knew I committed the crime between a 30-day period. Demanded that I tell him where I had the bracelets, asking if I pawned them. At 16. Ruined my high school. Kid was super popular. Soon the whole class looked at me as some kind of thief. Teachers included. Ended up dropping out of school because I had become public enemy number 1. Nothing ever came from it. Go to a meeting for work. Co-worker says to opposing counsel, "Hey, do you want to meet Gutenberg Bible? He's here," and gestures back at me standing in the hall with a bunch of files. This motherfucker looks me up and down. Turns back to my co-worker and says no. Former boss owed me some back pay for a legit reason. My wife went into hospital for a month because of a complicated pregnancy. Baby was C-section and then had to be NICU. The day of the C-section, boss said he wasn't going to pay me anything. Edit for all those asking. Yes, of course I put in a complaint with the Ontario Ministry of Labour. Unfortunately, if an employer doesn't pay even after an order, it's put to collections. If the person is shitty enough like this dude was, they just dodge those collections too. I'm sure it'll catch up with him eventually. But at this point he's been run out of his home city. Not the most, but definitely up there in the top 10. Kids on the bus held me back and yelled to the bus driver, "He isn't here." So I had missed my bus stop and had to walk home. They did it again the next day. But I fought back in time, and when I was leaving the bus, the door caught a strap on my backpack and began to drag me with it. The strap finally snapped and I went rolling forward. I just lay there for a bit on that hot afternoon. That bus driver must be a f-king moron. My abusive first girlfriend said to me, "I'm glad for your mama because she doesn't have to be around you anymore." Literally the same night I confided in her that my mom ran out on me and I hadn't seen or heard from my mom in years. When I was 18, I was dating an alcoholic. We arrived separately to a party. And when I got there he was wearing nothing but a bathrobe. Drunk as FCK. And insulting and trying to fight everyone. I tried really hard to get him to leave the party so I could drive him home. And he was not having it. Started berating me and then threw a lit cigarette down my shirt. The same guy also put an overripe banana down the back of my shorts and hit my ass as hard as he could in front of all his stupid friends. He f-king sucked. Thankfully, it's 10 years later. I have self-respect now and don't date arseholes anymore. My roommate in the military was in a different unit. I had to be up at 5 AM. He had to be up at 8. It was 10:30 at night and I asked if he could stop talking on the phone while I'm trying to sleep or go outside, and he responded with, "It's not my fault, you have to get up early," and continued his conversation. I was new to my middle school. This middle school was in a small town where everyone knew each other and I was nervous since I knew absolutely no one. I walked into the cafeteria on the first day where we had to wait until the bell rang to go to class. I looked around and realized everywhere was full except for this one space at the bench-like tables. I headed towards it and asked the girl who was in the space next to it if I could sit there. She looked up at me, gave me a dirty look and asked, "Are you homeless?" I was dumbstruck. I didn't say anything. But she did shift a bit so I could sit down. I don't remember who she was. I don't remember her face. Or even her voice. But her words will always stick with me. Edit. She did not mean it in a joking way and was not trying to say something else. She meant exactly what she said, and that's what stuck with me the most. No humor. No playfulness. No failure to communicate. Just pointless cruelty. For reference, back in the day I was almost 300 pounds. Had long hair that was always in a ponytail and I was very timid and quiet. Anyways, in 7th grade a guy told me his friend had a crush on me. His friend was within earshot and he, with full disgust, said hell no I don't. Never her. I'm pretty sure they did it as a joke between themselves. But then other guys started chiming in, who they were not friends with, and adding their own 2 cents about how I was hideous. I was in 5th grade. 10 or 11 years old. I didn't do homework often. Because my teacher was mean. And I didn't want to do anything he asked me to do. But I decided to put in extra effort to finish all my overdue math homework so I could submit it the next day. I finished all the worksheets in one night. Stapled them all together. And wrote my name on the top one. I gave them to him. He looked them over. Tore off the top one. Then ripped the rest of them in half and threw them away. He looked at me and said, I don't know who those belonged to. They didn't have your name on them. And then he kept me inside from recess and told me to read them all. F-king asshole. I'm still pissed at you. MR. Prime. I was crying my eyes out on a park bench in the city. He and my abusive ex-boyfriend had a huge fight over the phone and he essentially told me that I had no friends. I wasn't worth his time. His friends hated me. I can't actually remember what started the argument. But he'd said a lot of incredibly upsetting things to deliberately hurt my feelings. A stranger came up to me crying over the phone, trying to do it quietly and hide it, might I add. The guy looks me straight in the eyes and said "Oh, what a f-king mess" and walked away. Made me feel like complete sh*t. Edit. Holy sh*t. I did not expect this to get so popular. Thanks for the upvotes and your kind words. My sister brought our cousin, who I despise, to sleep in my apartment just for the night. The next morning, the cousin invited my ex-boyfriend and started to make out. In my living room. On my couch. I hate them both. Edit. Hard to pick from the list of things this whack ass would do. But as a child my mom used to scream at me that everything was my fault. Literally everything. Horse died from a medical condition? My fault. Sibling throws a temper tantrum? My fault. Things I had absolutely no control over. She'd also wake me up to yell at me that she was going to go kill herself and leave for days. And wake me up at midnight or 2 AM. On the dot. To do chores. The list goes on. Forever. And I should probably be a roadside meth head. And I was almost a suicide victim. But I'm not. And I like to think I'm heading in a good direction. I'm really proud of myself for that. Really dull thing here. Misled me about a job's benefits, specifically the pension, then refused to make good when called out on it. I'm sure it was a simple admin error. It'd have cost them less than you accrued 1,500/year to correct. But you accrued 1,500/year is a lot more to me than it was to them. They were a multi-billion huge organization. And I was supposed to just quietly accept it. FCK. That. They were astonished when I resigned 2 months later. Went in for a handshake and they dabbed on me. Edit wow thanks. 20 plus years ago when I was in 6th grade. An 8th grader spit on my bike. Then in my helmet. Then on me. I punched him in the face. One of my friends saw all this. Ran up and also punched him in the face. He ran home. I was making out with a girl sometime after midnight in a bar on night. First time I ever managed to do so with someone I just met at nearly age 24. She pulls away for a second. Looks at me and says, "What am I doing? I'm drunk and you're ugly." Edit. Thanks for the compassion everyone. This statement going through my head was gym fuel for many years afterwards. And she actually didn't want to stop making out with me. And being drunk myself with minimal self-esteem. I figured the best revenge was to get her to continue kissing an ugly dude. Joke's on her. You were the best looking guy she had kissed all year. Husband, 40, had a major cardiac emergency out of the blue. Really near death. No real medical history. A bit overweight. Had quit smoking cigarettes a few months prior. Was in the ICU. Multiple surgeries. Readmissions. I was by his side for all of it. Weeks of touch and go. I took care of bathing and feeding him while he was admitted because he was embarrassed to have the nurses do it. Ran the house. Took care of the kids. Juggled sitters. And continued to work when I could. Also had to contact his employer. Insurances. Disability. FMLA. Wife. Mom. Nurse. Repeat. I signed up for this. And did it all without a second thought. After the last procedure that really turned him around. He was feeling better but couldn't return to work. Was still unable to help out with housework. Limits on lifting and activity. So I'm still running the whole show. He said he was bored sitting around the house. So he took up smoking cigarettes again. Biggest f-king slap in the face. Definitely one of my greatest hits. One of my ex-girlfriends made with another dude at this bar we were at. Not 10 feet away from me. I couldn't believe it. Some little shitty spat on me. I'm a teenager and the kid was like 8. Girl invited me out on a dinner date and then made out with my roommate while I was asleep. They dated for 2 years before she cheated on him, so I'm really not that broken up about it, but it was a rough few months. Edit. 3,000 upvotes? Well then FCKU Lindsay, since this is getting visibility. Drove halfway across my city to address a supper meeting of a veterans group and found I was expected to buy a pretty expensive ticket. No microphone. Nobody talked to me over supper and a big thank you when I was finished. After delaying my flight. Rerouting it in the middle of my flight. Letting us off the plane to stretch our legs and the immediately cancelling my flight. Forgetting to call for a bus to shuttle all the passengers to the destination airport for 2 hours. A 2-hour bus ride. And missing my connecting flight. The United Airline employee refused to give me a hotel voucher. It was 3 AM and she told me, I'm sure someone will give you a blanket. Also, after 7 years on Reddit, I finally got my first award. Thank you, kind stranger. That's what you are supposed to say, right? I suppose that was one thing United Airlines was good for. I live as a foreigner in the UK. There was this girl who was the same age as me and from the same country. Me and my parents have done so much for her and her family. Some of these things included translating certain situations for her. Her English was not the best apparently. Getting her prepared for high school. My parents driving her to places she needed to visit, etc. We somehow ended up in the same college and in the exact same class. She ended up making up a stupid lie about something I did. She managed to turn everyone in that class against me to the point where I got called horrible names and whatnot. It sucks how you do a lot of someone and then they decide to do this. It was 2006 in algebra class. I was having trouble understanding the Pythagorean theorem. The teacher's sped aid was steadily helping me on my left when one of my classmates walked up to my desk to my right and said, "You're a failure." On a positive note, I graduated high school in 2010 with cum laude. This asshole impregnated his girlfriend sometime before spring break and dropped out. I guess certain words are drives for everyone else. You. Cum laude. Him. Cum load. I was bullied a lot growing up and in 7th grade I got a lot of it at the bus stop in the morning. The bus stop was at the street corner on the sidewalk that ran along the big wall that bordered my neighborhood. And one day apparently they found some used condom on the ground and one of the girls had it on the end of a stick waiting for me to come around the corner to leap out and throw it on me while others laughed. She missed. My deadbeat biological father, who had no hand in raising me, has a "can't feed em don't breed em" meme on his Facebook. Ordered before he eventually left Facebook. FCKU Joe. During my 8th grade panoramic picture. The kid behind me pushed me as the camera was turning. I didn't fall off, but when the photos were sent out, I was having trouble finding a college course close enough to home that I wouldn't need extra money for residency. My mom told me I decided not to go to college, so she took my education fund and paid off her furnace. Without that money I couldn't afford to go to college. It was years before I could afford to get a loan and go back to school. Both parents are disappointed that I haven't paid off the loan yet. I'm the only kid that went to college. I graduated with honors and my $35K loan was cut down to $18K. I've been out of college for about 4 years and paid off more than half. I was expected to pay off the total over the course of 25 years. Oh. And my mom never went to college herself. So it was that much worse when she told me she was going to spend my college fund.